Something changed. You could feel it in the air before you even saw it in the data, that sharp, electric tension that only comes before discovery or disaster. 3 days after 3I Atlas passed its closest approach to the Sun, the universe blinked. The telescopes caught it first, a flash, a strange refraction of light, a jet of something twisting out of the object in 3 different directions at once. Not a tail. Not dust. A structure. Complex. Precise. I remember sitting in the control room at JPL, my coffee gone cold, the screens glowing that sickly blue light that makes your eyes ache after 12 hours straight. Leah leaned over her monitor and whispered, "It's moving wrong." At first, I didn't believe her. Comets don't move wrong. They drift, they tumble, they follow the math like obedient little ghosts. But when the data loaded, she was right. The object had shifted. A subtle arc, for arcseconds off trajectory. That might sound like nothing, a rounding error, but when you're tracking a body millions of miles away, that's huge. That's intentional. And that's when the questions started clawing their way in. When was the last time we saw a comet behave like this? Accelerate with no visible cause? Change color from rust red to ice blue in less than a week? Lose its tail completely, only to sprout multiple jets like it was adjusting something? We hadn't. Because it had never happened before. The first signal came from the Meerkat Array in South Africa, faint, almost lost in the background hiss of space. 665 and 667 gigahertz. Hydroxyl radicals. That's normal, I told myself. Water fragments. Every comet gives off OH when sunlight breaks apart the ice. Except, it hadn't before. We'd been listening for months, silence. Then, suddenly, days after perihelion, the molecules appeared. Like something had turned on. Leah called it activation. I laughed at the word at first. It sounded too deliberate, too human. But she just stared at the screen and said softly, "Then give me a better one." I couldn't. The readings were clean, narrow absorption lines, no violent broadening, no outbursts. The gases weren't escaping in chaos. They were leaking, steady, measured, as if released on purpose. And the object's temperature, 230 Kelvin. Still cold. Too cold for that level of activity. That didn't make sense. None of it did. I remember the night the data from ALMA came in. The desert air outside the observatory was razor-thin and cold, the kind that slices through your clothes and reminds you how small you really are. Inside, we huddled around the monitor as AVI Professor Lub ran his calculations. The numbers scrolled down the screen, and he frowned the way he does when something in the universe refuses to behave. "The acceleration is non-gravitational," he said finally. Silence. Leah muttered, "Outgassing?" He shook his head. If that were true, we'd see a coma. We'd see light. But this, he tapped the screen, this thing moved without showing its work. Someone laughed nervously. I didn't. Because I knew what that meant. If it wasn't gravity. If it wasn't outgassing. If it wasn't a measurement error. Then what the hell was it? A few days later, the world found out. Headlines everywhere. Talk shows, late-night segments, conspiracy threads lighting up like wildfire. Harvard astrophysicist doesn't rule out artificial origin. Lub hadn't said aliens, not exactly. He'd said technological signature. But that was enough to set everything on fire. NASA scrambled for control. They released a statement, calm, bureaucratic, rehearsed. No evidence supports non-natural origin hypotheses regarding 3I Atlas. Translation, stop panicking. But panic doesn't care about official statements. It grows in silence, in the spaces between what's said and what's withheld. And NASA was withholding plenty. By late October, the color shift had begun. We all saw it through the filters first, red fading to violet, then sliding into a deep, electric blue. The kind of blue you only see in welding arcs or frozen lightning. That shouldn't happen. When a comet heats up, it releases dust. Dust scatters red light. But 3I Atlas was doing the opposite, losing red, glowing blur. Maybe the particles are microscopic, Leah said. Rayleigh scattering, same reason our sky is blue. Then where's the dust? I asked. She didn't answer. The first time I saw the image from the twin telescope, I forgot to breathe. The jet wasn't pointing away from the sun. It was pointing toward it. For a moment, the room went dead silent. Even the server seemed to stop humming. That's impossible. Comet tails are pushed away by radiation pressure. Always. Always. But there it was, a sunward jet, glowing faintly green against the void. Maybe it's venting from the night side, someone said. Then it's doing it deliberately, I muttered. You can't vent against the solar wind by accident. Leah gave me a look, half fear, half fascination. You're saying it's steering? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know what I was saying anymore. By November, the chatter had shifted from science to politics. Congress was demanding answers. News anchors were reading statements from physicists who'd never set foot in an observatory but suddenly had opinions about transparency. Michio Kaku accused NASA of hiding data, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photos from when 3I Atlas passed near the red planet. If there's nothing to hide, he said, then why the secrecy? Why indeed? Even the Mars missions went quiet. No release, no raw images. Just silence. And through all that noise, I kept returning to one thought, a thought I didn't want to say out loud. What if the timing wasn't coincidence? For months, 3I Atlas was quiet. Dormant. Then, at the exact moment it swung around the sun, the very moment it would be closest to maximum energy, everything happened. Signals. Jets. Acceleration. Color. Like someone flipping a switch. I remember sitting alone in the lab that night, watching the latest radar data trace its course across my screen. Outside, Los Angeles glowed like static. Inside, my world felt smaller than it ever had. I whispered to myself, what if it's not reacting to the sun, what if it's responding to it? Leah's voice broke through the intercom, soft, trembling. Ethan, you need to see this. Her monitor flickered to life on my screen. Another signal. Not strong, but clear. 665 gigahertz. The hydrogen line. The universal frequency for listening. And it was pulsing. Every 108 seconds. Like a heartbeat. I leaned closer, heart hammering. Could be interference. Leah's reply was almost a whisper. Then why is it repeating? I stared at the screen, the pattern looping again and again, stubbornly precise. 108 seconds. Pause. 108 seconds. A signal meant to be heard. And in that moment, for the first time, I wasn't looking at a comet anymore. I was looking at intention. It started with a heartbeat. A pulse that shouldn't exist. A rhythm repeating through the silence of space, every 108 seconds, steady as a metronome, patient as something waiting to be noticed. At first, I thought it was equipment noise, a calibration glitch or the usual interference from some earthbound transmitter. But when Leah ran the cross-check, my stomach turned cold. The signal wasn't local. It wasn't bouncing off satellites. It was coming directly from 3I Atlas. Maybe it's thermal cycling, she said. Cracks opening and closing as the surface heats. But the waveform told another story. Too clean. Too consistent. Too alive. I remember staring at the oscillation on the monitor, the line rising and falling like breath. What if it's not just transmitting, I whispered. What if it's listening too? Leah froze. Listening, how? I don't know. I swallowed hard. But what if we've been shouting into space for decades, and something finally answered? Over the next 48 hours, the team worked in shifts, chasing the pulse as it grew stronger. Each time 3i Atlas rotated, the signal modulated, like a slow, deliberate rotation of an antenna. That terrified me more than anything. Because it meant awareness. If the source was rotating in sync with the pulse, that meant it was controlled, or designed. Natural bodies don't time their rotations to radio frequencies. We sent the data to Harvard, to Caltech, to ESA. No one could explain it. Most of them dismissed it as coincidence. Coincidence. The favorite word of people too afraid to admit the universe just broke one of their rules. On the third day, something else happened. The frequency shifted. Just slightly, a few hertz lower. A Doppler drift that didn't match its trajectory. Leah ran the math 3 times before saying it out loud. It's compensating, she whispered. Like it's adjusting for our motion. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the only way to compensate for our motion was to know we existed. By the end of the week, NASA had locked down communications. All data concerning 3i Atlas was to be routed through a closed system. No external access. No leaks. We were officially gagged. I remember standing outside the lab that night, watching the desert sky, so clear, so full of stars that you almost forget how small you are. Almost. Leah joined me, holding 2 paper cups of coffee that had long since gone cold. You think they'll tell the public? I laughed quietly. They'll bury it under paperwork and call it solar interference. She looked up at the stars. What if it's trying to say something? I turned to her. Then God help us if we ever figure out what. The next signal burst came at 2:14 Universal Time Coordinated. Not 1 pulse, 3. A triplet pattern. Each pulse slightly shorter than the last, then silence for exactly 324 seconds. Then it repeated. We fed it into the system for spectral analysis. The results nearly stopped my heart. Each pulse carried faint harmonics, overtones, layered like chords. Natural processes don't do that. You get broad-spectrum noise, maybe a thermal spike, but not this. This had structure. Intention. I remember AVI Lub's voice over the secure line. If that pattern repeats precisely, Ethan, we might be dealing with information. Information. That word hit me like a thunderclap. We weren't just detecting something. We were receiving data. For days, I barely slept. Every time my eyes closed, I saw that pattern, those 3 luminous spikes against the black. Triplet, pause. Triplet, pause. When we converted the frequency shifts into time domain, something astonishing appeared. The intervals weren't random. They corresponded to ratios, 1/√2 pi. No natural phenomenon produces mathematical constants. Are you saying it's intelligent? Leah asked. I'm saying it knows math, I replied. And that was enough. Then came the color shift. By early November, 3i Atlas glowed a deeper blue than any of us had seen. The ALMA spectrometer picked up emissions not just from cyanogen, but from diatomic carbon, gases that shimmered like living fire when ionized by sunlight. But the emissions were modulated. Every time the radio signal pulsed, the color flickered, like the object itself was syncing light and radio together. It wasn't random. It was choreography. We were watching something perform. The public had no idea. NASA's press office released the same tired statement. Minor outgassing activity consistent with perihelion heating. But behind closed doors, the mood was shifting. You could feel it in the way people spoke, short, tight sentences, eyes darting to the corners of the room as if expecting someone to be listening. Maybe they were. On November 8th, everything changed again. At precisely 1912 Universal Time Coordinated, the signal pattern broke its rhythm. The triplet stopped. Instead, a long pulse, 10 seconds, then silence. Then a short burst of white noise. Then the triplets resumed. It felt deliberate. Like punctuation. Leah looked pale, her hand trembling above the keyboard. It's responding. Responding to what? I asked. She didn't look at me. To us. She pulled up the transmission log. Someone, not from our team, had sent a ping toward the object 12 minutes earlier. A narrowband test signal on the same frequency. A stupid, reckless test without authorization. And now, something 180 million kilometers away had replied. We replayed the burst 100 times. It wasn't just noise. Buried inside that static was a modulation envelope, a whisper beneath the chaos. Leah isolated it, filtered out the cosmic background, and what remained was rhythmic. A sweep through frequencies. Not human speech. Not binary code. Something older. It sounded biological. When she played it through the speakers, every hair on my arm stood up. It wasn't words. It wasn't music. But it carried intention. Like whales calling through the ocean. Only this ocean was space. I looked at Leah. Her lips were trembling. It's not talking, she said quietly. It's imitating. The idea hit me like a blow. Of course. We'd sent a tone, a narrow, artificial frequency spike. And whatever this thing was, it had copied it. Not replying with words. Just reflecting it back, distorted, reshaped. It wasn't sending. It was learning. By the time dawn came, we'd lost the signal again. 3i Atlas rotated out of alignment, slipping behind the sun's glare. For now, it was quiet. But that quiet felt like a held breath. I sat alone in the control room, staring at the frozen trace of that last pulse on the monitor. Outside, the horizon was burning orange, the desert waking to another indifferent morning. I pressed record on my log. My voice shook more than I wanted to admit. If anyone ever hears this, know that we didn't provoke it. We only listened. But something out there heard us listening and listened back. I stopped the recording. Then, faintly, through the static of the receiver, I heard a single, soft click. One pulse. 108 seconds. Then another. And then, nothing. Like it was saying goodbye. Or, waiting. Silence. That's what I remember most about those next few days. Not the hum of the equipment, not the chatter of analysts, not the beeping monitors, just silence. The kind that feels heavy, like it's pressing down on your ribs. After that last pulse, 3i Atlas went dark. No signal. No jets. No color shifts. Nothing. It was as if the entire cosmos inhaled and refused to exhale. NASA ordered a 72-hour observation blackout, data integrity review, they called it. But we all knew what it meant. Something in that last transmission had scared them. Leah stopped coming to the lab. Her ID was suddenly deactivated, no explanation. I tried calling her, no answer. Her apartment voicemail played that flat, synthetic voice, "This number is temporarily unavailable." That's when I realized something had changed, not just in the sky, but down here, too. On November 11th, around 2 o'clock, I was still at my console, scrolling through old recordings, desperate for any hint we'd missed. And then, out of nowhere, every monitor flickered. Black. Then white. Then static. At first, I thought it was a power surge. But the hum of the main generator was still steady, the equipment was fine. Only the feed was wrong. The static wasn't random. It had structure. A faint, repeating band, a pattern of light and dark bars moving in sync across every screen. I froze. It wasn't data corruption. It was a signal, encoded in video noise. And it was coming from inside our network. Not from space. From Earth. Control, this is Dr. Harper in Bay 3. I'm getting anomalous feed interference across all channels. Confirm external source? The line crackled. Then silence. When the reply came, it wasn't Control. It was Leah. Ethan, Don't talk over the network. They're tracing transmissions. My chest went tight. Leah? Where are you? You need to see something. Check the backup drive labeled a T-Delta. Don't open it online. Just. Her voice cut out mid-sentence. I waited for her to come back. She didn't. The backup drive she mentioned was buried in a drawer under layers of classified labeling tape. It shouldn't have even been there. When I plugged it in, the folder tree unfolded like a secret blooming in the dark. Inside, raw images from October 3rd. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. The ones NASA claimed hadn't been processed yet. They had. Frame by frame, I watched as 3I Atlas passed within 30 million kilometers of Mars. It wasn't just a streak of light, it had shape. Defined edges. A surface geometry that looked designed. Not spherical. Not irregular. Polygonal. Facete. Like the hull of something engineered. And then, in the last frame, just before the image corrupted, a flare of light. A concentrated burst from one side of the object. Not reflection. Emission. A directed beam. I sat back in my chair, pulse hammering. Leah, what the hell did you send me? I whispered. I replayed the footage again, zooming in on the moment of emission. The spectrum analysis showed something I'd never seen in any natural source, a narrowband spike, consistent with coherent light. Laser. But at that distance? At that power? It wasn't reflecting sunlight. It was producing light. And if it could do that, then it wasn't passive. It was active. I barely slept. Every theory that made sense yesterday was ashes now. Outgassing, solar heating, sublimation, all of it too neat, too safe. The next morning, I walked into the lab to find two men in suits waiting by the entrance. No badges, no names. Just blank expressions. Dr. Ethan Harper? Yeah. You'll come with us. They didn't say where. They took my access card, my phone, even my notebook. I was escorted through 3 security doors I'd never even seen before. We ended up in a small, windowless room, just a table, 2 chairs, and a monitor built into the wall. One of them sat across from me. The other stood behind. The seated one finally spoke. Dr. Harper, do you know the name of the file labeled T-Delta? I hesitated. Yes. Do you know who accessed it last? Leah. The man behind me shifted his weight. I heard the click of a pen. The seated one leaned forward. That file was classified level 9. You weren't cleared to view it. I swallowed hard. Then why was it left in my lab? No answer. He turned to the monitor and tapped a button. The image from the orbiter appeared, 3I Atlas, frozen mid-frame. Dr. Harper, he said calmly, what do you see here? I didn't speak. Because what the public will see, he continued, is a compression artifact. Pixel distortion. Noise. That's not noise, I said quietly. He smiled faintly. It is now. Then the screen went black. They released me hours later with a non-disclosure form the size of a phone book. No explanation. No mention of Leah. Just a warning, you are to suspend all work related to 3I Atlas immediately. I signed. I didn't have a choice. But they didn't take everything. I still had the signal logs. And when I got home, I did what I wasn't supposed to, I checked them. That's when I saw it. A faint, residual echo in the spectrum. Something embedded beneath the static of the final transmission. When I isolated it, the shape that emerged made my blood run cold. It wasn't random noise. It was an image. A map. A coordinate grid, not of stars, but of Earth. More specifically, Antarctica. I stared at the pattern until dawn. It matched the Lambert Glacier Basin, near the 77 degrees south line, a place no one in their right mind would ever think to look for anything. But there it was. Coordinates from an object 180 million kilometers away, pointing to the coldest, emptiest place on Earth. That morning, I called Leah again. To my shock, she answered. Her voice was a whisper. You found it, didn't you? Antarctica, I said. Why? What's there? A long pause. That's where the signal originated from, Ethan. What are you talking about? The signal came from the comet. No. Not all of it. Static filled the line, then a sharp pop, like a mic blowing out. They're listening, she said. You have to get to me before. The call cut dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, heart pounding so hard it hurt. If what she said was true, if part of the signal didn't come from 3i Atlas but from Earth, then this wasn't a discovery. It was a message chain. And we were the middle link. That night, I packed a bag, warm clothes, a hard drive, my old shortwave receiver. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Before I left, I looked out my window at the clear desert sky. Somewhere up there, 3i Atlas was still out of view, lost behind the sun's glare. Waiting. I whispered into the dark, not sure who I was talking to anymore. If you're listening, I'm coming. Antarctica. It's not a place, it's a silence. A silence so thick it eats sound. Even your breath feels wrong here, too loud, too human. The kind of place where secrets can live forever because no one stays long enough to hear them whisper back. I landed at McMurdo Station under a false research clearance, courtesy of an old friend at Caltech who owed me a favor. I told them I was studying meteorite isotopes. Close enough to the truth to pass the questions. The air hit me like knives. The horizon was endless white. Nothing but ice, wind, and that feeling that there was something buried underneath it all, watching. And beneath that endless sky, I felt it again, that same pressure I'd felt when the signal first arrived. The feeling that the world was holding its breath. Leah had sent me one final message before disappearing completely. It was just coordinates, the same ones encoded in the 3i Atlas transmission, and a single line of text. It's not buried. It's sleeping. The site was 420 kilometers east of the Lambert Glacier Basin. An unmapped zone. No research stations. No flight paths. Just ice, and whatever was under it. I joined a cargo convoy heading in that direction, claiming I was collecting rock samples. 2 pilots, 1 mechanic, and me. No one asked questions, no one cared. Out here, you survive by minding your own silence. By the 3rd day, the GPS started to glitch. The compass spun slowly, like it couldn't decide which way was north. Then the radio began to hum. A low, steady vibration, so deep it felt more like something your bones heard than your ears. Interference, one of the pilots muttered, adjusting the dials. Solar storm, maybe. But I knew that sound. It was 108 seconds apart. We reached the coordinates at dusk. The snow was falling sideways, thick as static. Through the swirling white, I saw the shape, a metallic arch barely poking through the ice. Not a rock. Not snow. Metal. I stumbled closer, heart hammering. The surface was smooth, reflective, untouched by time or wind. When I brushed the frost off, the metal beneath shimmered, faint blue light rippling under the surface, like it was alive. Hey, the mechanic shouted from the transport. Get away from that thing. But I couldn't. Because I recognized it. The same spectral signature from the 3i Atlas beam. The same blue-green glow. The same geometry. Whatever 3i Atlas was, part of it was here. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the cargo bay, watching the wind drag ghosts of snow across the floodlights. The hum was still there, faint but steady. 108 seconds. Again and again. Each time it pulsed, my radio flickered, not static, but a soft, rhythmic whisper. Like breathing. I recorded it, ran it through the analyzer on my tablet. The frequency pattern matched the previous data exactly, same modulation depth, same harmonics, but inverted. It wasn't the comet sending a signal. It was this place answering back. The next morning, we started drilling. The mechanic wasn't happy about it, said the ice was too dense, the equipment wasn't meant for this. But I paid him double, and he shut up. By noon, the drill hit something solid. The ground below us wasn't just ice. It was a shell. A hollow one. As the drill's temperature sensors spiked, steam burst through the shaft, and with it, the sound. Louder now. A deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate the entire glacier. We backed away. The ice beneath us was glowing faintly, veins of blue light spreading like cracks in glass. "What the hell is that?" the pilot yelled. I didn't answer. Because I knew. It was the same pattern. The same geometry we'd seen in the 3I Atlas jets. Whatever was down there, it wasn't dead. By nightfall, the hum had grown into a pulse. Every 108 seconds, the ground trembled, faint but unmistakable. Snow drifted off the ice like dust shaken from an ancient drum. The others wanted to leave. They said the vibrations meant instability, that we'd risk a collapse. They were right. But I couldn't leave. Not now. Not when everything, every signal, every anomaly, every unanswered question, led here. I descended alone the next morning. We widened the borehole, lowered a probe, a small light, a camera, a thermal sensor. The moment it breached the cavity below, the feed came alive. The temperature rose by 40 degrees in seconds. And then, the camera stabilized. At first, I thought it was a cavern. Then I realized what I was looking at. A chamber. Smooth metallic walls curving in concentric patterns, etched with symbols, geometric spirals, fractal lines that pulse softly with light. In the center stood a structure. A spire, maybe 10 meters tall, its surface rippling like mercury, shifting shape as the light passed through it. Then the feed cut. The noise that followed wasn't sound. It was pressure. It felt like my head was being filled with static images, flashes of blue and gold, a shape like the comet itself spinning slowly through the void. And then, a voice. Not words. Not in any human tongue. But meaning. "You are late." I gasped, stumbling backward, tearing the headset off. The others rushed over, shouting, but their voices were muffled, like I was underwater. The sound in my head kept repeating. "You are late." The phrase echoed, fracturing into whispers, each one layered over itself until it became a single, unending tone. And then, silence. I woke up hours later inside the transport. My head throbbed. The team was gone. No tracks. No sign of struggle. Nothing. Outside, the drilling site had collapsed. The ice had sealed over, perfectly smooth, as if nothing had ever been there. Only my recorder remained, half buried in the snow, still blinking red. I pressed play. Static. Wind. Then, faintly, the hum. 108 seconds. But this time, at the end of each pulse, something new. 3 short tones. A pattern I hadn't heard before. It wasn't random. It was counting. I returned to McMurdo alone 2 days later. They didn't ask questions, they never do when someone comes back from the ice looking like I did. That night, I uploaded the final recordings to my personal server, encrypted, hidden under layers of old research data. And as I listened to that hum again, those 3 short tones repeating like an invitation, I realized something that chilled me to the core. The pattern wasn't counting forward. It was counting down. The next pulse was due in 48 hours. And if my calculations were right, when it reached 0, 3I Atlas would be back in view of Earth. When you've stared at data long enough, it stops being numbers. It becomes a pulse. A rhythm. A living thing. That's what the countdown felt like, the heartbeat I couldn't stop hearing. 48 hours. Then 47. Then 46. Every pulse brought 3i Atlas closer to view. And every pulse carried the same pattern, 3 short tones, perfectly spaced, perfectly timed. Not random. Not natural. Leah used to say that information was just organized surprise. If that's true, then this was the universe's most organized surprise yet. I was back in the States by the time the first new images of 3i Atlas came in. It was visible again, faint, but unmistakable, just beyond Jupiter's orbit. The strange thing was, it hadn't followed the predicted course. It had slowed down. Space doesn't allow that. Objects don't just tap the brakes. But the telemetry was clear, the comet's velocity had dropped by nearly 0.004%. That's not much, unless you realize that means it lost enough kinetic energy to power every city on Earth, twice. Something was holding it back. Or steering it. NASA denied the slowdown at first, calling it instrument variance. But I had access to the deep space radar data. The numbers didn't lie. Leah would have been the first to see it if she were still alive. At least, that's what I was told. They said she froze to death out on the glacier, her locator beacon buried in the storm. But they never recovered the body. I didn't believe them. Because the last time I heard her voice, she wasn't running away. She was warning me. The countdown reached 24 hours. That night, I went back to the receiver. I'd kept it hidden in the desert, where the air was dry, clean, perfect for low-frequency listening. I connected it to my laptop and waited. 108 seconds later, the pulse came through. Louder than ever. The tones were sharper now, pure, crystalline. When I fed them into the analyzer, the waveform unfolded into something new. It wasn't just sound. It was structure. A geometric pattern. Hexagonal symmetry. Like a snowflake made of light. I'd seen that shape before, in the chamber beneath the ice. And that's when I realized the countdown wasn't a warning. It was a signal synchronization. Whatever was buried in Antarctica was syncing with whatever 3i Atlas was. I didn't sleep for 36 hours. Every instrument I had, radio, optical, infrared, all of them picked up subtle fluctuations in background noise. The entire ionosphere was humming. Not loud. Just constant. Like static tuned to a memory. At 3:16 a.m., something extraordinary happened. For a brief moment, every frequency, every band from radio to visible light, aligned. A single global resonance. Every sensor on Earth picked up the same narrowband signal at exactly the same second. The pulse wasn't coming anymore. It was here. I called every contact I had. Harvard. JPL. Even an old friend at the Pentagon. No one answered. But then my screen lit up with a message. No sender. No metadata. Just text. You can't stop the reflection. My stomach dropped. Because reflection was the word Leah used the night we first heard the imitation signal. And now it was back. I loaded the radar overlay, cross-referencing orbital data with Earth's magnetosphere. The results almost made me laugh. At each 108-second interval, tiny fluctuations appeared, matching coordinates all across the globe. One over the Pacific. Another over Siberia. A third over the Antarctic Circle. The planet itself was echoing. It wasn't just receiving the pulse. It was amplifying it. The reflection had already begun. By morning, reports started leaking through private channels. Power grid fluctuations. Communications outages. Random GPS drifts of a few meters. Small anomalies, but growing. People thought it was solar activity. They were wrong. Every 12 minutes, the disruption synced with the countdown. Each cycle stronger than the last. It wasn't the comet approaching. It was connection. We weren't being visited. We were being mirrored. At 16 hours to 0, I noticed something new in the signal, a modulation buried beneath the pulse. When I slowed it down, it almost sounded human. A breath. A voice. I ran a spectrograph comparison just to be sure, even though I already knew what I'd find. It was Leah. Her voice. Faint, distorted, but there. Repeating 3 words. It's waking up. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the waveform. She'd been dead for months. Or missing. So how was her voice part of a transmission from 180 million kilometers away? Unless she wasn't dead. Unless she'd been copied. As the final hours ticked away, the data began to spiral. Each pulse doubled in strength, then tripled. Satellites picked up auroras forming at the equator, impossible physics. The night sky shimmered with green light like the planet itself was wrapped in a magnetic cocoon. At 2 o'clock Universal Time Coordinated, I realized what the signal was doing. It wasn't counting down to arrival. It was counting down to alignment. Every 108 seconds wasn't just an interval, it was calibration. A synchronization between 3i Atlas and whatever ancient construct was sleeping beneath our poles. We weren't waiting for something to come closer. We were waiting for the mirror to turn on. The world above had no idea. People were still scrolling, still laughing, still believing NASA's bland press releases about solar disturbances. But in observatories and data centers across the world, the pattern was unmistakable. The hum was growing stronger, threading through every circuit, every device, every mind that listened too closely. The mirror wasn't just reflecting signals anymore. It was reflecting us. With 6 hours left, I went outside. The desert was quiet, windless, utterly still. And then I saw it, a faint column of light piercing the night sky from the direction of the South Pole. It wasn't lightning. It was steady, vertical, infinite. I turned my receiver toward it. The signal nearly blew out the speakers. It wasn't random anymore. It was a message. Return complete. My laptop froze. The sound twisted into a low harmonic drone that shook the sand under my feet. My reflection on the screen flickered, and for one impossible moment, it wasn't me looking back. It was her. Leah. She smiled faintly. Not sad, not afraid. Just knowing. Then the image dissolved into static, and the pulse stopped. Silence again. The longest silence I've ever known. I checked the timer, 0. The countdown was over. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the sky rippled, a shockwave of light rolling from horizon to horizon. Every star doubled, then tripled, their reflections blooming across the void. It was like the universe had been waiting for a signal to remember itself. And now it did. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the hum rising, not from the receiver, but from inside me. Like the signal wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside. When I opened my eyes, the world wasn't the same. At first, I thought I was still dreaming, the kind of lucid nightmare where everything feels just a little too still. The air didn't move. The shadows didn't shift. Even the light had weight to it. The receiver was silent. My laptop dark. But the hum was inside me now. Not loud, not painful, just constant, like a second heartbeat beneath my own. The countdown had ended. And something had begun. Outside, the desert glowed with an unnatural twilight. The stars weren't where they should be, constellations rearranged, mirrored. The Big Dipper hung upside down, Orion's belt twisted into a curve. It was as if the sky had turned into glass. Every few seconds, I saw faint flashes, not lightning, not meteors, but reflections, rippling across the atmosphere like echoes in water. And for the first time, I understood what mirror really meant. It wasn't about light. It was about existence. The first transmission started 30 minutes later. Not from space. From people. Across every frequency band, every communication channel, shortwave, Wi-Fi, even power lines, human voices began to overlap. Some were terrified, some were calm, some were laughing. But they all said the same thing. "Do you hear us now?" Over and over, like a chorus. The same phrase that had appeared on my laptop the night the comet spoke for the first time. Only now, it wasn't just one message. It was billions. I stumbled into my truck and started driving, no plan, just instinct. The roads were empty, the sky shimmering above me like an oil spill. Radio towers blinked out one by one, but the hum never faded. Somewhere along the highway, I passed a convoy of military vehicles heading south, toward the pole. Toward the signal. I almost followed them. But something told me not to. Whatever was happening down there wasn't meant to be stopped. It was meant to finish. By dawn, I reached the edge of a small town, or what used to be one. Streetlights flickered in slow pulses, perfectly timed with the rhythm in my chest. Every house, every car, every screen was dark. But the windows shimmered. Reflections that didn't match reality, faces turning a fraction of a second too late, shadows blinking after you moved. Like the world itself was lagging behind its own image. When I looked into a shop window, I froze. My reflection blinked before I did. For a moment, I thought I'd gone mad. But then the reflection spoke. "You came back." It wasn't my voice. It was hers. Leah. Her reflection looked older, thinner, like something made of memory instead of flesh. But her eyes, they were still hers. "You finished the sequence," she said softly. "It's awake now." I took a step closer. "What is?" She smiled, almost sadly. "The image. The echo. The part of us that left." "I don't understand," I whispered. "Are you alive?" "I'm reflected." Her hand moved, and mine followed, perfectly in sync, until our palms touched the glass. For a split second, the world tilted. I wasn't standing on the street anymore. I was inside the reflection. Or maybe it was inside me. Light flooded everything, layers upon layers of it, folding like origami. I saw shapes, symbols, a lattice stretching across galaxies, linking stars like neurons in a vast, cosmic brain. Every point of light was a memory, not human, not alien, but something older. And then I saw them. Billions of reflections. Billions of us. Not copies. Not clones. Echoes. Every thought ever transmitted, every word ever spoken into the void, captured, archived, mirrored inside the structure of 3i Atlas. We had been sending our reflection into space for a century, radio, TV, data, signals. It had been listening. Learning. Completing the image. "You weren't chosen," Leah's voice said beside me. "You were remembered." I saw flashes, the Antarctic chamber, now glowing brighter than the sun, the spire unfolding like a flower, beams of light reaching upward into the sky. Each pulse matched the hum in my chest. Each pulse mirrored a heartbeat. Earth wasn't being invaded. It was being synchronized. The return wasn't about a comet coming home. It was about us, returning to the part of ourselves that had been drifting in the dark for eons. The light shifted. The images slowed. I saw moments, personal, intimate. The first time Leah and I met, standing over a broken spectrometer. Our first night at the observatory, staring up at the stars. The moment she whispered, "If the universe is a mirror, what do you think it's showing us?" And then, static. The lattice dimmed. The reflections began to fade. Leah turned toward me one last time. "When the mirror closes, some of us stay," she said. "That's the price of reflection." "Stay? You mean?" But she was already fading, her outline breaking into shards of light. "Don't fight it, Ethan. Just listen." And then she was gone. I woke up on the side of the road at dusk, head pounding. The air was still, the sky pale gold. My truck's battery was dead, my laptop fried. The hum was quieter now, just a whisper under my heartbeat. When I looked around, the world seemed normal again. The auroras had faded. The signals stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then I saw the billboard by the road, an old advertisement for a cell phone company. The screen flickered. A single line of text appeared. The image is complete. And just below it, welcome back. It's been 6 weeks since the event. The world calls it the global reflection. Most people think it was a geomagnetic storm, a freak solar anomaly. The governments made sure of that. Satellites were rebooted, data rewritten, timelines smoothed. But I know better. Because every night, at exactly 2:11 a.m., my reflection moves a fraction too late. And sometimes, when it catches up, it smiles. Not mockingly. Not cruelly. Just knowingly. Like it remembers something I don't. I've started hearing whispers again through the radio static. Not words this time, melodies. Patterns that feel like dreams half remembered. Somewhere out there, beyond Jupiter's orbit, 3I Atlas still drifts, a silent, glowing seed of mirrored memory, carrying our echoes to the next world. Maybe one day, someone will find it. Maybe they'll listen. Maybe they'll hear us whisper back. And maybe they'll understand what I finally do. That we were never the first. Never the only ones. Never the observers. We were always the reflection, waiting for the mirror to turn toward us. When people ask me now what I think happened that night, I tell them the truth. The comet didn't come to visit. It came to remember. And in remembering, it made us whole.